Had an awful lot of fun with the chatbot stuff, and I've presented many times with DTC perspectives. And when this one came up, Scott and Jennifer were thinking that one of the challenges that a lot of folks face in our industry is that we're incredible thought leaders in our respective fields. We're really good at doing what we do, but we really don't have the time, resources, and wherewithal to put together content for a presentation and present it in a way which has the impact that's proportionate to the great ideas we already have. We're all busy, presentations can be kind of a pain, they're oftentimes off the beaten path of what we normally do in our day-to-day lives as pharma marketers, as clients, as vendors, etc. So we thought we'd take a few minutes in between the formal sessions and the panel and the cocktail hour, which we're all looking forward to, and then the dinner, to have a couple of workshops. And just as Jennifer mentioned, today we're going to concentrate mostly on some best practices for making that killer deck. Do it resourcefully, do it efficiently so it doesn't take up too much time. I'll show you some tricks that I've picked up. And then we can interact a little bit. I'd love to hear from any of you that would like to share some of your best practices, how you do what you do. And then tomorrow, if you're still around for the broadcast and the TV and print one, we're going to flip it into the actual presenting stuff. So today we're going to build a killer deck, and tomorrow we're going to kind of present the killer deck in a way that gets the impact that's, as I mentioned here, worthy of your genius. So ready to rock? Let's give it a shot. I need the clicker. Need to click away. Thank you. So as I mentioned, we're in part one, and the idea is make your deck content as powerful and as memorable as your ideas. And we were just discussing earlier too, whether you're in procurement, whether you're on a brand team, whether you're on the vendor side of the house, it doesn't really matter what you do, but as professionals, especially in communications, marketing, and PR, we all need to do these things, one way or another. If it's either at a conference, thought leadership like this, if you're presenting to your own teams, this is a necessary part of our professional lives, and it could oftentimes be kind of a pain, kind of gets in the way. And I'm here to help to see if we can make it smoother and most importantly, make it more fun, if that's possible. So in terms of my background, I've been in the pharma DTC space for a while, at least close to 15 years. So I've got a background in clinical, marketing and PR is kind of the bridge. And I've been kind of a technical geek too, as you probably saw from the prior presentation. So in our world of healthcare, communications, and technology, I've been kind of swirling in that, and I personally enjoy this kind of stuff of being a ham. You know, I should probably, my wife recommends that I should do stand-up comedy, and that might be my next. So maybe we can combine the two. We can do a stand-up comedy routine for DTC Pharma. I don't know how well that will go, but anyway. So the premise I had is just what I shared, which is you're a genius. You're obviously great at what you do. That's why you're here. Your expertise can range anywhere from data and analytics to the marketing side of the house, brand platforming, creative, what have you. You're great at what you do. But these can be a pain. You don't have time for this kind of stuff, right? So my goal here is to make it as effortless as possible in terms of creating great content, not having to work too hard, but working a little smarter, more efficiently, right? And the acknowledgement is content is king, right? So you need to get in front of people. You need to translate your ideas in a way that can get the most impact for everything that you do professionally. And then lastly, it just takes a little bit of extra something to take a presentation that might be, okay, and kind of convey some of the sense of tedium that went into it, and really making it all that. And that's what we're all about here. So one thing that I thought about when I put this thing together is kind of a house of mirrors. So I'm giving you a presentation about presenting, and I've created content about creating content. So it's kind of a show and tell format, but most significantly, I'd love for anybody to get involved participate. So I'll try to make this as interactive as possible, workshopping. But of course, you got no obligation. You just kind of watch, enjoy yourself, go for it. One thing to note, which is really important, is you remember Marshall McLuhan? I don't know if you remember that guy from the 1960s. He was the epitome of kind of the pre-digital guru of how content and form, the medium is the message. And whenever I do these things, I'm always surprised about the dependencies that exist between the content of what you're sharing and then how you're sharing it. And as we've seen even today in the social media panel discussion, everything we're talking about, not only is content king, but context is queen, and the two are interwoven together. So I'm going to talk a lot about content in this session, but I can't help but talk about how you present, because the two literally go hand in hand. The first step, I'm going to share 3 best practices with you, and we're going to have a little breakout session for each. But as a forerunner to that, there are a couple fundamental things that we all know but often take for granted that you need to kind of get your mind wrapped around. The first is know thyself and thy audience. So know why you're going to do what you're going to do, and most significantly know whom you're going to present it to and why. A lot of times we create presentations, we kind of take for granted and know the purpose of it and who we're presenting for, but lots of times it's almost so obvious that we forget, we get lost in the weeds, and before we know it, we lose context, and it kind of loses its zip. So number 1 is that. So from our vantage point, for DTC pharma audiences, which is tacitly assumed because we're all here, right? We might present for patients, caregivers, professionals, payers, provided, media, colleagues. So the first kind of interactive moment, and I don't mean to put anyone on the spot, just, contribute. What kinds of presentations do you guys do in your professional lives? Do you pitch to colleagues? Do you go out there in terms of sharing thought leadership? Anybody want to share an opportunity where you really are kind of on the spot and need to build a deck or present? Obviously, we're almost all building decks, right? We're all slaves to PowerPoint. Any kind of context? Mr. Brad Einerson?
2 days from now, the social team is presenting to the rest of the strategy team on what we do.
Yeah,
to help them sell more of our stuff. And I was
all right, cool. So he said he's the head of the social media team at Click Health. And just to paraphrase, because you didn't have the mic, you need to present your goodies to the broader strategy team for them to educate and empower them. So it's colleague to colleague in 2 days. So it's crunch time, got to get it out, right? Any other examples? That's a colleague to colleague kind of opportunity. Anyone else? Okay, anyway, so whether it's colleague to colleague or you're out there doing, it's like know yourself, why you're doing what you're doing, and knowing who it's for. Given as just a quick follow-up is because you're presenting to colleagues, that's obviously a very different kind of presentation than you would make to the group overall. Click Health does these breakfast meetings, very, very cool, where you actually present to the broader company in terms of your expertise. You're going to present in terms of the other experts in the strategy team, so the mindset's going to be very different, and maybe the level of granularity and detail and specificity is going to be different than if you do it that way. Okay, great. So 3 takeaways today I want to share for content goals. It's going to impact your presentation too. And this can go for any deck to make, any kind of content you want to share. Turn complex ideas into simple story. Okay? There's a difference between dumping people with information and telling an awesome story. Right? A story is there's a good guy and there's a bad guy, there's a beginning, middle, and end. Right? And a story is entertaining to the audience, right? Because we love hearing stories. We tell stories to each other all the time. We're kind of programmed as human beings to tell and listen to stories. That's how they think that the origin of language comes from storytelling. In contrast, data dumping is just information. So if you want to keep people's interest, because we're not talking to bots, we're talking to real people, storytelling is, I'm going to help a little bit with that. The other one is very, very tactical, And this one gets me the most excited. If you walk away with any single thing that I could show you, it's like how to make a slide, which is more like a billboard. You know when you're driving on a highway and you see something kind of going by real quick, it's got to capture your attention and 1 second, half second, kind of tell you what it is. Slides in a deck, regardless of who you're presenting to, most often have to fulfill that role. And I'll get to it in a second, but the biggest boo-boo that people make, and I think the biggest missed opportunity, is that people are competing with their slides. They feel they got to pack it with so much information that the slide is kind of doing some of the heavy lifting, or if you forget where you're at, you kind of look at the slide and you kind of read it, right? But you're presenting to the audience. This isn't, you're not at the library reading a book, you're sitting watching another human being express him or herself and communicating their passion and their energy. That's very, very different than the passive experience of just kind of processing words on a page. I'll get to that in a second. And then close with a memorable call to action. A lot of folks kind of come up, they do their thing, thanks, goodbye. If you don't leave people with an impression, it's the same thing in marketing and advertising. Like what do you do? Learn more, download the patient support package, right? There's got to be some action that you want to do, and we'll get to that in a second too. Okay, goal number 1, turn complex ideas into a simple story. Your ideas are deep and complicated. So you're starting at a disadvantage whenever you want to build a deck or put a presentation together. You're naturally going to start in the weeds. And this goes back to being the genius that you are, having all the information in the world, and that being completely different than the elements that go into telling a great story. Right? The hero does this, the bad guy did this, they fought, the hero won, the hero wins. That's very, very different than all the info you have, especially from a technical point of view, that you need to kind of cobble together. The thing to keep in mind is that for a presentation, as I mentioned, you're connecting with an audience. It's kind of like a conversation. It's a bit of a one-way conversation, right? But it's nonetheless a conversation. There's sights and smells. It's a living, organic experience. It's not simply conveying information, computer to computer. It's human, but you need to do that. To educate your audience, you must entertain them. This is a truism that I can't emphasize enough. Like, we're here for all sorts of reasons, right? Thought leadership, networking, connecting. But when you're sitting, taking stuff in, you want to be entertained, you want to be interested, you want to be captivated, and that makes for an effective transmission of information because they're motivated to listen and become part of it. So based on everything I said, the deck that you make, regardless of your audience and regardless of content, is more like a storyboard of a movie or a play. It's not a leave behind document. It's not a technical manual. Like when you buy a CD drum player, right, back in the day. Now they don't even give instructions anymore when you buy something. Remember you get like a little disc and what have you, put it in your computer and get the instruction manual. And before that, you get like a TV instruction manual, which is 40 pages thick, with all the info on it. You know, that's information. We're not talking about information. We're talking about making a connection, convincing somebody to do something, which is very, very different, which puts it into the realm of storytelling. So your deck is more like a screenplay than it is an information manual or a how-to. So there's steps in putting a story together. And this is very, very different than if you're just sharing information about how to do something. Identify the hero is before you do anything, figure out who the hero is, okay? So I just took a few from our world. Hero could be your company, right? Could be a brand, a franchise, an audience, a campaign, or a tactic. This goes back to know thyself and why you're doing what you're doing. This is the singular focus and frame of reference. In my talk that you saw like an hour ago, who was the hero there? Who do you think the hero was? Was it me? Was it Siri? I think, go ahead.
It's a tactic. the boss.
Yes, great. That makes me feel good because it's obvious, right? I opened the presentation, which is like, welcome to the invasion of the bots. And I interacted with the bot, the fake one, but I kind of made it up, I personalized it. And the whole presentation, I wanted you guys to believe in the bot. That the bot would change our lives, that the bot would improve us professionally, that the bot would help us connect with our audiences, and the bot was where it was at. So thank you, that's great. And that reinforces that my hero was crystal clear. Health bots that are going to take over the world. And the stuff that gets in the way, what was the villain of my presentation? Was the villain obvious? The stuff getting in the way of the bot revolution happening, right? Go ahead.
Misunderstanding.
Absolutely, right? Remember I talked about artificial intelligence platforms versus virtual assistants. The feeling that Skynet is going to come, or you need to spend $1 billion on IBM Watson if you want your website to talk to your visitor, right? Excellent, thank you. So I had a hero, health bots, and then I had villains, people who were getting in the way of the bot taking over the world, right? And then the next step is, what's the solution? In our world, it could be tactics, media plan, and the like. Was I clear about what the solution was? And I said, the hero are chatbots, and what's getting in the way is misunderstanding about bots, confusion, thinking that regulatory gets in the way. What was the solution I was advocating? In the end, I was hoping to keep it kind of real. That was said, like, the bots are taking over, you got all this misunderstanding and stuff getting in the way, but if you follow these 3 simple steps, right? If you honor privacy and security, if you're respectful of compliance and regulatory, and you stay focused on the goal, and I showed a little example of how you just program a few lines, you're already bottom up, right? And I encourage people that don't think it's just a vision of the world in 2050, but you can go right back to your desk and make a recommendation and get a bot on your website. It's doable, and it could really, get you the corner office, right? And then share the results. So if the hero fights the villain, there's a solution, and then there's a sense of revolution, a sense of accomplishment, right? And then when you're doing that, what's the key brand? And maybe in my presentation with the bots, is that whole futuristic kind of thing, like it's transformative. And maybe to critique my own presentation, I could have offered maybe a payoff there. But I didn't want to hit it home too much. I thought I did what I needed to do. Okay. And then lastly, the beginning, middle, and end in every story. And you see how it's very, very different than just sharing content. I could have spun it in a lot of different ways, which is share a bunch of statistics, share a few examples, but I told the story within the context of our conference here, that we're both social media and technology experts. I tried to convey how social and tech came together to do the bots, and then I laddered it up into a broader conversation. So when you do stuff like this too, it's a matter of really trying to tell a story within the context of that journey. So real quickly, and I don't want to dwell too much time, it depends on everyone's mood to participate. I got a board, but we can even talk through it. Does anyone want to volunteer? And it could be within our industry here, or we could just make anything up, to illustrate creating a story rather than just dumping people with info. Anyone have a top of mind story based on something? My hero, whatever it is challenged by this villain, resulting in some problems. My solution resulted in these measured benefits. Anyone want to try it?
Oh, Brad.
Got a story, Brad? Anybody? Or we can just wing it. You want to?
What I'm doing is my social team.
Excellent. This is good. You want to go for it? Yeah. All right. We have like a mic, so Brad, this is kind of fun. You can see Brad.
Well, everybody, after seeing my presentation, everybody should know that I need this.
Right.
What am I doing?
All right. We go through this exercise. Who is your hero?
Okay, so the hero is the social team.
The social team is the hero.
Yeah.
Okay. And then
We are challenged by lack of understanding. Oh,
Hero is challenge.
so the hero then is the strategy team, and they are challenged by lack of understanding, resulting in non-optimized solutions.
okay, good. So the strategy team is challenged by confusion or what have you, and then efficiency is struggle. We can add specificity to it. Another aspect of this is making it more specific because then it's more emotional resonant.
Okay,
What about the solution?
so is the solution my presentation?
No, the whole damn thing is a presentation.
Okay.
So,
So my solution is the clearinghouse, right? Process and people clearinghouse, and it results in, cleaner projects, better MRL results.
okay. So when you set up the presentation, how would you do that? Yeah, just in terms of kind of the story.
Well, if it was me, I would end up with 6 slides.
The details, right. So part of it is the context. So the situation is a challenging environment. So the strategy team is not getting what they want in terms of communication. How would you bring that to life on the slide? Not to call you out, but just as a creative exercise. You see how it goes, which is like, he knows he needs to do something, but it's got to translate into,
Well,
you don't spend 8 hours on the deck, you just want to bang it out.
but it would either be an example of something that failed,
Great. Specificity.
right? Or a quote.
Okay.
Which would be a quote, it wasn't a fail.
Great. Now, let's keep that in mind. Let's use this example, if you don't mind, to take it to the next step. Now, create slides that act like billboards. Okay? When you're driving in a car, you got your eye on the road. It's a very dynamic, very kinetic environment, right? And actually, driving is the biggest rush that a lot of people get emotionally. We take it for granted, but you're literally driving 2.5 tons of steel at 50, 60 miles per hour. And in terms of the physical power that we have as human beings in our everyday lives, think about it, it maxes out. Okay? There's a tremendous amount of distraction and intensity to it. We always drive and we get everywhere, so we always take it for granted. But it's a very intense environment. It's dangerous too, more than you would think. Again, take it for granted. You don't have time, you're focused on that. Billboards need to be quick, and the real focus is on the road. The story of the slide that brought down the space shuttle. Okay? The Columbia disaster was 2003, right? So what happened was ice gathered on it's liquid oxygen and hydrogen at like 200 below zero. They combine, when you combine oxygen with hydrogen, they form water and a tremendous amount of energy. So what had happened was ice was building up on this big tank. When the thing launched, the ice hit the wing. It broke the heat-resistant shield on it. So when the shuttle re-entered the atmosphere, it didn't have the protection it needed and it blew up. It was a major tragedy, right? They stopped the program. I'm calling this the story, but this is true, actually. Okay, so there are consequences to slides that are too dense. This is the slide. This is the slide that many experts think led to the destruction of the space shuttle and pretty much the end to the entire space program that the U.S. was doing. This slide cost billions of dollars and pretty much ended our superiority in space. Check this slide out. Bunch of words, densely packed. There's no story. There's no hero. There's no villain, right? There's no solution, and there's no measurable results or recommendation. Crater over-predicted penetration of the coating significantly. That's basically saying that the experiment of ice breaking the shield, the prediction was wrong. So basically, we're wrong about this situation. Flight condition is significantly outside of test database. Volume of ramp is 1,920 cubic units versus 3 in the test. What does that mean? That literally means that the destruction caused by the ice in the test was 600 times what they were anticipating. Right? The slide doesn't say, who's the hero? The space shuttle, right? Or who's the hero? The heat tiles on the space shuttle. Who's the villain? The ice. What's the challenge that they're facing? Misrepresenting the factor of the villain is 600 times more strong than we had thought, resulting in potentially cataclysmic destruction of the vehicle. I apologize for being pedantic, but it's kind of fun if you think about it, right? And kind of sad. This slide ended the American space program, and I'm not kidding. Right? It's amazing what information can do. So my recommendation, time to break up with your slide deck, right? You fall in love with your information. Your information is really important for you. It's not about your information. It's what your information means for your audience. So visuals help guide. Text should be key bullets and bullets in the talk track. And then this slide, by any stretch of imagination, is an unacceptable piece of information to share with people under any circumstances. It's just words. It conveys no meaningful information. So whether you're building a slide deck, even for a leave behind, and especially if you're going to go up, this was presented, this slide, to the quality test and control teams at NASA, right? And they looked at that, and what did they see? They saw volume of ramp is 1920 cubic units versus 3 in the data test. It's not that the ice is having 600 times more damage to the wing than we thought. That's a story, you know? So I find this very interesting. So here's a moment of truth. If I convey anything meaningful in this workshop, and you can walk away with it, and remember, I had this workshop with Spitz, and now I can think completely different about when I put PowerPoints together and when I'm sharing information with people. Doesn't matter who it is, under what circumstances, this is it. Old school. The dangers of volcanic eruptions. Many eruptions are explosive in nature. They produce fragmented rocks. Blah, 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 blah. Right? Even worse. Hilling and Lipton in 1930 estimate that 500 million people would be at risk from volcanic hazards. Right? Are you asleep yet? How many slides do you see every day professionally? How many slides do you create professionally that kind of look like this? Right? What does it mean? It doesn't mean anything. Right? The ice is 600 times more damaging. 1,900 cubic units. Right? That's a big difference. Ready? This slide, the way it should be. Volcanoes are intense. Does it lack specificity? Yes. Is there a lot of information on it? No. But remember, you're a human being having a conversation and telling a story to somebody. right? So if you want to get into Tillman and Lipman, 1993, and if you want to go into some of the backstory, you do it by actually having a conversation with a person and sharing your soul and your heart and communicating meaningfully. And then the impression you want to make is emotional, not cognitive. And that's very important when you're presenting. And it's even important in terms of the content you create. You have a gargantuan, uninflected image. And again, you don't always have to do this. This is an extreme example, but it's used to illustrate what works and what doesn't. Volcanoes are intense. That looks scary. Like if you're near, you almost feel the heat, right? And the one takeaway, the only words, which is everything that this previous slide says, with all that information, is captured in one sentence that volcanoes are intense, dude. Right? And then you can get everything you need out. Volcanoes are intense, the ice is dangerous. Heads up, pay attention to the top line detail. And here's the ticket. If you string together a bunch of these, when you watch a movie, you watch scene, your mind puts the connections together because that's what storytelling is about. Right? And it goes image, feeling, and then it becomes the story. It's not about the details and information, but it's about that. So, quick exercise. And I think we have time, kind of fun. We can go with your example, or we can think of another one. So in workshops, I call it emotionalizing a slide. How do you get from danger of volcanic eruption to volcanoes are intense, right? Run as fast as you can, right? So I'm going to pick an example and then we can try something else. And I apologize if this sounds a little pedantic, but I can't overemphasize how important this is and how it's a different way of thinking that I think is effective. Choose a topic. So for example, patient centricity. We talk about that all the time. Right? Extract the essential point. If you ask me the essential point of being patient-centric, and again, I'm just kind of riffing, is personalization. The essential point of volcanoes is they're intense, and you should run as fast as you can, right? It's not about patient centricity so much as it is about what's at the core of that, which is personalization. And then search for images, create infographics. And again, I think this is significant too, especially for presentations. Because you're up talking, and like a billboard driving, this needs to enhance you. It needs to kind of be a frame of reference, like an actor on a stage in a setting. It's like Lucy and Desi are in the kitchen, right? You don't go into too much detail about the Frigidaire, and no one cares what's in there. Do they have cream cheese, right? Do they have a ham sandwich? No one cares. Lucy and Desi are in the kitchen. It's the same thing here with the concept that you're trying to share. And then lastly, that image or anything is thematically connected. So when people look at that image, it's not a detail. You don't put a ham sandwich in there to get the feeling of Lucy and Desi hanging out in the kitchen. You put something that's reflective of their relationship. In this case, patient centricity is about personalization, and then the image I picked was just this kind of one of standing out, or being unique to a particular person. Are you with me? Does this kind of make sense as a tool? Should we try an example real quick? And then I can move on to the third topic. Do you want to go with your example? No? Anyone want an example? Should we try something? Anyone working on content or working on something, and we can kind of play with this a little bit?
So one more of a question or comment, I guess, to this particular slide with volcanoes. I guess what we try to say is more than just communicate the fact that they are dangerous, right? It's more of a story, maybe they become more and more dangerous.
Yes.
So I guess a little bit of an oversimplification.
Absolutely. No, that's a good point. That's a good point. That's the price you pay, right? And that's the balancing act that you always do with creating content and their planning, which is prioritization and the selection of information. What do you emphasize and what do you ignore? I think David Mamet, the writer, once said famously that bad writers use what other people throw away, and good writers throw away what other people use, which is kind of cool. So when putting together a good deck or when presenting, you have to make many, many choices. And the choices you make ultimately need to be geared toward the satisfaction of your audience and the clarity of your story. It's about relevance, right? Going back to the ham sandwiches in the refrigerator. Good movies and bad movies tend to do this too. Bad movies provide a tremendous amount of extraneous information that interferes with your emotional connection to the characters and the dramatic arc of the telling. So a bad movie starts out with the announcer, some off-screen person saying, "It was a dark and stormy night." And on screen you see darkness and you see a storm. Right? So some information is redundant. Some information is just irrelevant. When two people, if you see a good play, right? Two people walk from one end, from stage left and stage right, and they come together, right? And they start interacting and talking. And based entirely on what they say and how they act and their relationship with each other, you know an awful lot about who they are. You know who is powerful and who is weak. You know who is leading the conversation and who is following, right? And you also start to figure out what their goal is, just based on that. You don't need to get a biography of each character. You don't need to know what their favorite ice cream is. And you don't need to know anything except for the reality of this person and what they do together. So to answer your question, that's exactly correct. It might be an oversimplification. But the slide doesn't exist by itself. And then when you look at the different slides in terms of hero, villain, solution, and result, like a case study, by the audience and you putting all these together, you get the backstory about what you're trying to do. Does that make sense? Yeah. So, all right. Let's see if we can go a little more. All right. So we tell a story instead of just dumping people with information. The way we tell the story is very emotional in terms of these little scenes or vignettes, capturing one key idea that we then embellish and that gets connected together. And then you need to get to some place where they remember who you are and what you did and ultimately what you want to convey. So the thing to keep in mind too is that your audience is bombed by information. So sometimes the less you say, the better. And if you're saying an awful lot, you need to summarize. And at the very least, you need to end with 1, 2, and maximum 3 points that they'll remember you by. Right? So if I succeeded, what are a few of the points I made in my chatbot? I'll put myself on the line. So in seeing me talk about chatbots, if there's the 1, 2, or 3 things that you didn't know before you saw me, or 1, 2, 3 things that you'll apply or do after you saw me. And then if you think about Spitz at DTC at the conference, what are the few things that come to mind? Which 6 months down the line, or a year even, I run into you at another conference or some networking event. And oh, you're the chatbot guy. And then 1, 2, 3 things. What would those be? And this is a good test to see if I didn't suck, right?
Chatbots.
Okay. Great. So you said chatbots can improve our relationship with DTC marketers. This chatbot thing can actually improve how we're connecting with patients and do stuff. And then the second point, just to paraphrase you, is it's not like science fiction. We could actually start doing this stuff now. That's cool. That means I succeeded. And is there a third point about actually, these are 2 insights, is there anything that translates into action? Because this is important, because we're in the business of behavioral modification, right? The goal about educating anybody to really do anything isn't necessarily to enlighten them, although that's a good part of our job, but it's to get them to do something. Did I get you to do anything with my talk that applies to you professionally? Are you going to do anything related to chatbots can help with patient engagement and interaction with people? Do it next year. All right, so you're actually Awesome. And then, did you feel that way before, or I inspired you to maybe do that? All right. Great. That makes me feel good. So I accomplished. I had clarity of purpose and a decent result. How are we for time? You good? Okay. Great. All right. Awesome. So it's cut through and be remembered. Okay, we had a lot of speakers today, and they had a lot of different styles. Okay, so what kind of styles did we see today at this conference? And we had different. It's not better or worse, but it's just different. When you make a selection in a store, and there might be some brand strategy people here too. It's the art of positioning, which is not only differentiating your product, but you see how you fit into the whole landscape, right? So what were some of the positioning of the speakers, or what was the style? Some of them were contemplative, calm. Other people were very maybe histrionic. Some dived into details based on expertise. I know Brad, we worked together for years, and this guy gets it done. I remember he's got headphones on and he's working, and when Brad speaks, what I get is the authority of the direct experience with your content. To me, when Brad presents, that's always what I get. Which is, not only does this guy know what he's talking about, but he does it. He lives it. He's not making the shit up. And that to me comes across in your style of presenting, which is cool, which goes to, the next point here, and I think this is really, really important, it actually has an impact on content too, is be yourself, be unique, stand out, and take a risk. So if you are naturally kind of introverted or shy, so coming up is a little bit terrifying, and you feel kind of at odds, that's not necessarily a bad thing, because what you do to kind of protect yourself and compensate for that tension could actually infuse what you do with power and grace and solidity. And conversely, if you're a bit of a ham, right, and you like to kind of go nuts, you can dial that stuff up too to great effect. So be yourself is really important. When you put together content, it should always reflect who you are as a person. That should kind of come out. Be unique is take pride in the sense that you do things differently and you come across that way. And stand out too and take a risk. So try to do it a little bit differently. And then if you're at like a 9 out of 10, let's just try to push it a little bit longer, because that little extra little goes a long way, and people kind of can feel that. They feel that you gave it your all. You gave it an extra shot. And that motivates people to not only pay attention, but be convinced, like, hopefully I did for you, is that we didn't think about putting a bot on our page, and maybe we could do it. And then lastly, a few takeaways that might help for landing on your feet. So it's the drive action part. So where I think I succeeded, and I think that's a flattering reflection on me, is that before you got here, you weren't really thinking about maybe actually having a customer service experience on your website. And now you're actually thinking about that. So keep it simple, immediate, and actionable. I ended with those 3 recommendations for stuff going, right? Limit to 1, maybe 2 specific asks and tasks, which is, believe in it, believe in the concept, believe that it's feasible, and then actually do it. Ensure results are measurable and shareable. So if it's feasible and doable, how do you show it? How do you flaunt it? What can you do about it? And then encourage closing the loop and following up. So end where you began, remind where you went, and ask how you did. So in true chatbot fashion, it's got to be interactive. This is a variation of tell them what you're going to tell them, and then tell them what you told them. Right? So people need to be a little bit reminded. It's like advertising, like coach the real thing, coach the real thing, coach the real thing. If you hear it 400 times, coach the real thing. You got no choice, right? So don't be shy about that. And the last breakout session is kind of a capital. Just like I was asking about, my performance, how'd I do for this? And then this is a part to share, which is, turn your experience into a two-way conversation. Survey yourself. Crowdsource the efficacy of your own content and messaging. There's something called kind of radical transparency that some companies are doing. And some do it more than others, and sometimes it can get absurd too, but it's almost like everyone tells everyone else in the company exactly what's on their mind. There's a hedge fund that actually does this. It's kind of crazy. So rather than thinking that this guy did something that sucks or this other guy did something great, you just kind of share it. There's a benefit for that, and then when you're creating content and when you're presenting, if you throw it back to the audience and ask how you did, it starts the conversation and it breaks the ice. So, okay, did I help shift your approach from data sharing to storytelling? Did I make any kind of impact? Was it convincing? Based on this volcano, if you're going to put together a deck, just even going back, is this slide something that you might do that you didn't do before compared to that? Are you willing to sacrifice detail for emotional impact?
Yeah, no, that definitely, it's more about what everybody knows, right? It's dangerous. So they don't necessarily have a headline for it.
Right.
What sort of, where it's going.
Can you sing?
Yeah, so where it's going, like what is the sort of impact of the volcanoes,
Right.
and how you maybe change over time. Like one of the things that pick up there. That's probably what's important, but they definitely have an image to illustrate.
Yeah. Cool. So are you thinking differently about content, how you communicate with people, either in PowerPoint or in other forms? Does that help translate your slides from the density to the emotional? So I guess that's part of it. And I guess I mixed the two up. So translate stories. So did I help frame it? So your presentation on in a couple of days from now, are you thinking differently of it? Was there value in you kind of hanging out and having Spitz kind of?
And it's almost on here, but it's an and.
Yeah.
You have a leave behind,
Right.
and you have a different.
So it's an and. You have a leave behind, which is the giant number of charts that I had, blah, 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 blah.
Right.
And you have a lighter presentation version, right?
Yeah.
So you can get your points across more quickly.
Yeah, and I think that balances with your observation too, which is you want specificity and detail. I mean, obviously a volcano is intense. So I think what Brad's getting at too is like a volcano is intense, and here's how the intensity of the volcano fits my story. And for more information, check the appendix or something. So you don't pitch from the data, you pitch from the story. You don't present from the information, you present from the story. And then for reasons to believe, or if people want more research and to substantiate out of the context of a live, interactive human environment, then you provide as many slides as you want, as much detail.
The other layer is that each image becomes a story unto itself.
Right.
Versus, you're like the volcano, you're going to bring some of these details from what the detailed slide into that image, but it's going to be verbal
Right, right.
versus in writing.
Yeah, yeah. And then with the takeaways and the call to action. So this is one of the consequences of really tons of information, and rather than telling a story or just sharing data, is that it's easy to forget or get lost in the details, and then people don't know what to do next, right? So, not to put you on the spot, but based on a successful strat meeting, what are the one or two concrete things? You don't have to give away anything agency proprietary, but what are the 1, 2, 3 things that you really want the team to do as a result of seeing your presentation? Huh? That's it? That's it. Oh, that's interesting. Okay. So,
That's the big,
And behavior remember.
yeah, that's fun. That's fun. So, end where you began, remind where you met, and ask how you did. So, after we went through this whole process, Brad said that the one key performance indicator of his presentation to the strategy team at his agency is, you know what, you guys keep doing, I'm just guessing, you keep doing your own thing. We're the experts in social media. I'm just reading between the lines. We're experts in social media. We're the SMEs of this organization. And you guys are doing all sorts of crazy stuff without us really being involved. And all you really need to do is pick up the phone. And when you pick up the phone, we become part of the process. We make your life easier and everything's better. More or less. Right? Ding, ding, ding. So thinking about your presentation, just from an example point of view, all of a sudden it's become different. There's process, there's people, there's platforms, but it's really about the call. It's really about the call. So imagine if Brad started his presentation with phones or phone imagery, right? And then what happens is, emotionally, not in terms of information. It's not like, here's all the schematics of our process, here's how we do it now, here's how there's a lot less boxes and lines if we do it in the future. But you just emotionally open a presentation with a huge uninflected image of a broken telephone or a telephone that's, I'm thinking visually, like, remember those old phone booths with the landlines? And remember, you'd walk by these phone booths, and many of them in the city, especially New York, would be vandalized. So you have a phone hanging off a wire with graffiti all over it. You see where I'm getting at? So emotionally, at your agency, people are doing their own thing and they're not calling you when they should. And what you want to convey is that the system's broken. And you want to lead at the end to show that it's all about the call. So after they see Brad's presentation, the one image that they have in mind is vandalized phone booths in New York. Otherwise, and I'm just making it up, you see what I'm getting with storytelling? Otherwise, there's process flow charts and recommendations for various touch points in the production cycle, and you know what I mean? You're in the weeds. Where at the end of the day, you have one key call to action: call us, don't do it yourself. And with that is an emotional, visceral image of a vandalized phone booth in New York City. And that's what I'm getting at for presenting, which is that people respond to visual, tactile, and emotional cues because it hits them here. And then they respond much less successfully to reasons and arguments and numbers and rationale. Music. Yeah, blondie. What if before you come that's funny too. Yeah, because there's an element of performance to all of this, which makes it very, very tactile and memorable. And what this all translates to is that if you want to bring about a behavioral change in somebody, which is the ultimate goal of what we do, start with the behavioral change that you want to bring about, and then kind of retrofit it and focus on that, and then the rest kind of follow. Kind of cool. I think that's neat. I learned a thing or two. So this is me. Let me know what you thought. Tomorrow we have part 2 where I go into the presentation aspect of this. After you build a deck with cool images and vandalized phone booths so you get people to call, what do you need to do as a speaker to kind of prep yourself up so that you're ready and excited to give the audience the zing? You got good content, what's the next step of doing that? And then here's my contact. You're welcome to download the deck and do all that if you want my contact info. And there's going to be a feedback form that Jennifer and Scott have for the conference. I'd love to hear back from you if this is moving. I want to get educated too, because this is something I really enjoy. And in the spirit of what I'm saying, it's all about feedback and radical candor and transparency in terms of just getting better at what we do. Thanks, Jennifer.